Nobody ever agrees on how many people lived there. That should have been the first sign. I found the old town by accident, if that's even the right word for it. The name appeared in a scanned document buried inside a folder labeled Miscellaneous Correspondence. No letterhead, no sender, just a reference to a place I didn't recognize. At first, I assumed it was abandoned, but abandoned towns usually leave evidence, photos, census records, something. This one didn't. What little information existed contradicted itself. One map listed it as unincorporated, another didn't list it at all. A third showed roads leading in, but none leading out. I noticed the same phrase repeated in several unrelated sources. Not highlighted, not explained, just repeated. Community Observance Nights. Attendance mandatory. No date attached, no context. At first, I ignored it. I wish I hadn't. The earliest mention I could find came from a personal journal scan. The handwriting was neat, almost careful. The writer never mentioned a cult. They never used words like ritual or belief. They just wrote about schedules, lights going off at the same time every night, stores closing early on the same day each week, everyone being indoors by sundown, not because of fear, but expectation. One line stood out. Visitors are welcome, but they don't stay. The sentence appeared again later. Same wording, different document, different year. That's when I realized these weren't copies, they were echoes. I tried searching for first-hand accounts. There were a few. Short posts, old comments, most of them deleted. But the ones that remained all mentioned the same sensation. Not fear, pressure, a sense that you were being watched, not by something hidden, but by something openly acknowledged, as if everyone knew where to look, except you. One account described arriving just before dusk. They wrote that the town looked normal, too normal. Clean streets, identical porches, every house with the same porch light, all off. Until exactly 7:14 p.m. Every light turned on at once, not gradually, instantly. The detail bothered me more than it should have. I checked sunset times. 7:14 didn't match. It wasn't astronomical. It wasn't seasonal. It was fixed. That timestamp appeared again later, in a school calendar, a bell schedule, on a handwritten note taped to a community board. Observance begins at 7:14. No explanation, no variance. I started to notice something else. Nobody ever described what happened during observance nights. They described the before and the after, never the event itself. One post claimed they tried to leave town just before it started. Their car wouldn't start. Not broken, just unresponsive. The dashboard lights worked, the radio turned on, but the engine didn't acknowledge the key. They said every other car on the street did the same thing. No alarms, no flashing lights, just silence. As if the town had decided movement wasn't necessary anymore. Another account mentioned music, not chanting, not singing, a low sound drifting through the streets, something rhythmic, measured, too slow to be a song, too structured to be noise. The writer said it seemed to come from everywhere, not loud enough to record, but loud enough to feel. They left the next morning, at least they thought they did. Here's where the story starts to diverge. Some claims the road changed. Others say they drove straight and still ended up back where they started. A few insist they lost time, not hours, minutes, always the same amount. 17 minutes. That number appears often, too often. I found a newsletter archived online, just one issue, every page scanned except the center spread. That section was missing entirely. The remaining pages talked about potlucks, maintenance schedules, community pride. Nothing strange, except a single line in the footer. Attendance confirms belonging. That phrase appeared nowhere else, but I recognized it. It matched a partially recovered audio transcript I'd seen earlier, one labeled meeting notes. The transcript cut out repeatedly, not randomly, at consistent intervals, 17 minutes apart, each cut replaced by the same bracketed note, unrecorded. At first, I assumed the cult, if that's even the right word, was religious, but nothing pointed to doctrine. No symbols, no texts, no central figure. What was emphasized was participation, presence, being seen where you were expected to be. One source described a newcomer who refused to attend. They weren't threatened, they weren't confronted, they were simply excluded. No one spoke to them, no one acknowledged them, even when standing inches away. The account said it feels like being erased in real time. The next entry was written in a different hand. It only said, "They left on their own." I checked property records. Several houses changed ownership repeatedly, always for the same price, always transferred on the same date. No explanation, no eliciting history. It was as if people recycled through this town, briefly, before being replaced. The longer residents never changed. Same names, same signatures, decades apart. That's when I found the warning. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even clear, just a line scribbled in the margin of a scanned map. If you are reading this outside the town, it means you were not counted. I don't know what that means, but I noticed something unsettling. Every document that mentioned Observance Nights has been recently updated, not edited, accessed, within the last year, some within the last month, even though no one officially lives there anymore. The town was dissolved on paper, absorbed into surrounding areas, declared inactive, yet the records persist, and they changed. I stopped digging after that, mostly. But once you know what to look for, you start seeing familiar patterns everywhere. Small towns with unexplained schedules, communities where everyone insists nothing is wrong, but nothing has ever been questioned. Places where being present matters more than believing. Some people say it was just a social experiment. Others think it was a coping mechanism that went too far. A few believe it never ended. I don't know which version is true. I only know this. No one has ever documented what happens during Observance Nights. Not because it's secret, but because, once it starts, everyone who's there is accounted for. And if you weren't invited, if you're only hearing about it now, then you were never meant to be present, which might be the only reason you're still able to leave, and why the town doesn't need to be on the map anymore.